Hello, everyone. If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. Awesome. All right, so today's lecture is going to be in coding from scratch, and we're going to be going over thinking like a programmer and HTML and CSS. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so week one, coding from scratch. First thing we're going to talk about is thinking like a programmer. In order for you to get comfortable with coding and solving coding problems, you need to put your mind in the mindset of a programmer, and it will make things a lot easier for you to tackle. So what that means is you have to be very good at precisely saying what you want to do. So a computer without a programmer is nothing, right? It's not very smart on its own. It seems smart, but the only reason why is because there was a programmer who developed some software. So in order to get that to work, you need to be very precise in what you're doing. Computers are not capable of understanding intent, adding context, and asking for clarification. So when you're talking to another human being and you say, hey, pass me the mayo or something, a human can understand, okay, pass, you put your hand motion this way, probably referring to something like this, and grab that. Even if you never knew what mayo was, you can figure it out. A computer wouldn't be able to do that. So we need to define what the word pass means, define what mayo is, and things of that nature. So one exercise I want to go ahead and do is making a bowl of cereal. So who wants to volunteer and tell me how to make a bowl of cereal? And pretend I'm a computer. All right, let's go.
Hello. So first you want to get a bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Then you want to grab a spoon.
Okay.
Then you want to go grab the milk and your favorite choice of cereal.
Okay. So as a human,
And
sorry.
okay, I didn't know if that was it. So then you take the cereal
Mm-hmm.
first, and then you pour it into the bowl. Then you top it off with the milk.
Perfect. So as a human being, those are pretty precise, detailed instructions, right? But as a computer, you need to define what pour is. I don't know what that word means. What is a spoon? What does grab favorite cereal mean? So things like that, like we can obviously translate that in our minds, but a computer needs everything absolutely defined. So thank you for volunteering. What was your name?
Abram,
Abram, thank you so much for that.
you're welcome.
But now we can have a kind of like a clear idea of how we want to be approaching a computer.
Cool.
All right. So, two important questions you want to ask yourself when you're dealing with a problem is, what do you have to work with? What information is given? What do you already know? And what steps are needed to accomplish your goal? Okay, so what do we have and what do we need to do with it? So one method that you want to do, and I like to do, is just like when you're outlining a paper. Say you have to write an essay about something. You outline it first. You have your big topic points, and then you have your supporting sentences, things of that nature, right? So with programming, you want to write it out by hand as well, right? Okay, if I asked you to grab all the $1 bills out of a wallet, you know that you're looking for a $1 bill, and you know that you have to loop through all the cash, right? And every time you see a 1, you grab that or count it. So you can write that out. Okay, I need to loop, I'm looking for this, and things of that nature. And once you outline it in pseudocode, and that's like fake code, or you write it out on a whiteboard, it will be easier to write the code. So before you start writing any code, work it out by hand first. What are you going to do? What do you need? And what steps do you need to take? So if I want the average of $1 bills in a wallet, what do I have to work with and what steps are needed to accomplish your goal? I just said this, but let's just see who is listening. Anybody want to volunteer and tell me the answer? If not, I'll randomly pick someone. All right, let's do gentleman in the red hat with a D on it. Oh, wait, let me unmute you. Okay.
Okay. Can you repeat the question again? It's a dollar bill, correct?
Right. So the problem is I want the average of $1 bills
The average
in a
of a
wallet.
dollar bill in a wallet?
Mm-hmm. So,
okay, so you'd have to get it in a decimal, correct?
I have to get it in a what?
You have to ask it for its like percentage and stuff. So you,
right.
Are we asking if you're talking to a computer, correct?
Right, exactly.
Okay, with the average of $1 bill in a wallet. So I'd ask the computer, we have $1 bill, and then you would tell it to take the certain math steps in order to get the average of the $1 bill in a wallet compared to all the other bills, I'm assuming, in the wallet.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so ask it for the $1 bill, that's average, and then, I mean, I'm not sure, actually.
Okay, no, that was good.
I'm trying to like figure out the steps, but like I know there's so many details that go into it, so it's like
right. So let's break this down together. So we're looking for $1 bills. Let's say we have a wad of bills, right? Everyone in the stream, right? So we're going through it, looking at every single bill, and we're checking to see if it's a 1, right? If it's a 1, we need to keep track of that. So every time I run into a $1 bill, I have like a tracker, right? The little clicky thing that you see at like roller coaster rides and stuff like that. So 1, 2, 3. But I also need to keep track of how many total bills there are, right?
Right.
So then we can calculate the average, which is another formula.
Right. Percentage.
Exactly. So if we walk it out like that, then we know that we need a bit of information which we don't have yet. Total number of bills, total count of ones, but we already have the formula for an average, right? The number divided by the total.
Right.
So those are the information and the steps that we can write out by hand. So then when we approach the code, it will be a lot easier to attack because you know that you're going to loop through something, you're going to check for something, you're going to count for something, and then you're going to calculate something. Does that make kind of sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for answering. All right. So now that we've kind of got our mindsets ready, we can go ahead and begin to create a project. So when you're creating a project, let's say I want to create a project on my desktop, I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to call it CFS project. Okay, so I've created my folder. Then I'm going to just drag it to Atom, my text editor. And then we have it open. So here, let me make this big. I can exit out of this welcome screen, and then we can see here that I have my project right here. So with that, I need to create some files in order to get my project going. So I'm going to right-click, click New File, and then I'm going to create index.html file. So the extension is HTML, so we know that we're going to be writing an HTML code. I'm going to make another file here, just make a couple more, let's say portfolio.html. Let's say I want to make another one, contact.html. All right, so I have a couple of HTML files. If it's a CSS file, it's going to be .css. If it's a JavaScript file, it's going to be .js. But we're just going to be dealing with HTML for now. So we have our files there ready to go. All right. So just as I displayed to you, you create your project folder, you create your files in your project folder. So there are going to be times where you might have a file that you think is in your project folder, but it's not, and you're wondering, why isn't this working? Always check to make sure you have everything you need in your root directory. If you hear the word root directory, it's just referring to your project folder. So this is the root directory of all the files. In here, you can have other folders, other files. You know, you've built a folder before with files in it. All right. So I've just shown you what that looks like. So we'll go ahead and jump into HTML. So what is HTML? It is a hypertext markup language. It's used to have more than just text sitting on a page. So essentially, HTML allows us to insert images, links, tables. It makes websites look the way that they look, right? It is the bare bones of a website. What makes it all pretty and functioning is where CSS and JavaScript get involved, but HTML is kind of like the skeleton of a website. So with HTML, you'll hear the words tags. Tags are a specialized series of characters that a browser interprets as either the start or end of an HTML element. So a tag looks like this. See this P, the red part on both ends? That's going to be your tag, right? Here is your opening, and the closing is going to be with a /. So this is the opening of a P element, and this is the closing of the P element. So anything in between these two is going to be of element P, which stands for paragraph, which then brings me down to elements. Elements are HTML components that contain the start and end tag. Think of them as a whole object. So if we're referring to the paragraph element, you can think of this entire thing. Okay, so that's going to be how everything looks as far as HTML is concerned. There's going to be a lot of tags, tags within tags, tags with stuff inside of them. But in general, we're going to have an opening and closing tag for almost everything. With that, we'll then jump into the document structure. So every HTML file has a general document structure that they all follow. We have the doc type, HTML, head, and body. These are the different elements that are involved in the structure. Doc type specifies which version of HTML is being used. The HTML element denotes the start of an HTML element. It contains the whole HTML element. Head contains the metadata, so that's data that's not displayed on the actual browser. So when you look at a website, you don't see anything that's in the head. It also links to other files. This is where you're going to put your code that connects your CSS file to your HTML file. And it also contains the title. So when you're looking at a website and you have like multiple tabs open, in the tabs, there's like a little title in there. That is where that goes in the head. Then you have the body element, which is where everything that's actually displayed on the browser appears. This is where you'll mainly be living as far as HTML is concerned, is inside of the body element. You'll still put things in the head, but that's just linking files together. So most of your code is going to be in the body element. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like in code. So if I go to my index.html, I'm going to start off with my doc type. I'm going to say HTML. Then after that, I'm going to have my HTML element. And then I'm going to have the closing, right? So we have our opening and we have our closing for our HTML element. Inside of that, I will have my head. And we'll close it here. And below my head, I have my body. Okay, so as we can see here, we have the HTML, which contains everything. Then part of that, at the top we have the head, and at the bottom we have the body. So we're going to be writing all of our code here. Except when we start introducing CSS and things of that nature. Inside of the head, there is a title, and that's where you see the top of a tab where you see the name. So let's say we call it my page. Okay, and this is going to be the bare bones of any HTML file. So I'm just going to go ahead and select all, copy, and just paste it to my other HTML files. So we all have the same structure. All right. So with that, you have structure elements. A couple of those structure elements are the div, section, header, nav, footer. So a div is used to create a generic container for content. So it's just, imagine just a box with content. That's a div. A section provides structure around a block of content, grouping in a logical format. So div and section, a div can do what a section can do, but a section just kind of makes it more logical. Like, let's say you have an About Me section or a Contact Me section, things of that nature. Header is new to HTML5. It wasn't in HTML from the beginning, but it's used to mark the header part of the body. So this is the very top of the body, and there's one per document. So you can't have multiple header elements. With section and div you can. Nav is single as well as footer, but the header is at the top, and that's normally where you put your navigation, where you're navigating to other pages of your site. Then you have your nav, which is used to mark up the navigation area. So the nav is normally nested inside of the header. The footer is a counterpart to the header, and it outlines the footer content in the document. So the footer is where you see usually where people put their social media links, where you scroll all the way to the bottom of the page and they have information, links to other things like customer service, find careers, things like that. So let's go ahead and add some structure elements to our file. So I'm going to be working in the index.html file. And let's see, we went over header, so let's go ahead and add a header. So the header is going to be at the top of the page, the top of the body. Inside of the header, we're going to have our navigation. And as you can see, I'm putting opening and closing tags everywhere. And then outside of the header, but still in our body, I'm going to go ahead and, let's see, put some sections. Put 3 little sections here. Okay, then inside of those sections, I'm going to go ahead and put some divs. And I'll end it off with a footer. And just so I can label these different areas, I'll say this is like a little About Me section, and then we have background section, and then maybe we can have a skill section. All right, so I've kind of made an outline for my page. Does anyone have any questions so far of the elements or tags that I've been using?
I just want to take notes of that real quick.
Oh, yeah. I have the code available after lecture. So if you want all the code that I'm writing out so you can look back at it with the video, you can just shoot me a message on Slack and I can just send you the code.
Oh, okay. That works too. Thank you.
Does that work? Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and space these out. Anyone else have any other questions?
I do, real quick. Is this program you're using? Is that what we're supposed to be using as well? Was it Atom?
Atom. Yeah, so that's what the curriculum asks you to download is the Atom. But if you're already familiar with a different text editor, like VS Code or Sublime, and you've been using that already, that's completely fine, whatever you're comfortable with. But I'm just using Atom because that's what's in the curriculum. So if there's screenshots of Atom, you're kind of familiar with it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a question.
Yep.
Yeah, for Atom, is it like an IDE of some sort? Like
yes.
Okay, I understand. Like in JavaScript, we don't need to do like to have a compiler, but do we have to debug within Atom, or there's a different debugger?
With Atom, it will pop up with little errors, like it'll be like a little X or something if something looks funny or it's underlined with a squiggly. Let's say if you forgot syntax. But it doesn't necessarily compile. You can install things into Atom to make it do different things, but for most of it, once you start getting deeper into the curriculum, you'll probably use a different IDE for whatever it is. Like, for example, if you're in .NET, you'll probably use VS Code.
All right, thank you.
No problem. All right, and then I think we have 2 chat questions. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and jump on to the next topic here. Element attributes. So we've seen elements in their bare bones, right? An element attribute communicates specific functionality about a tag. So there's 2 uses for element attributes. You can use it to change or modify a tag's functionality, or you can add functionality that isn't automatically associated with that tag. So, for example, if we're looking at these elements here, we have image, anchor, input, and button. So an image tag has the attribute source, SRC. And what you set that equal to is the source of the image. So that can be an absolute URL, which is like www.google.com, blah, 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 blah. Or you can have a relative URL, which is essentially if you were to have a file on inside of your folder. So let's say I had an image here, I would just put the file path to that image in order to put the source. Anchor tag has href, which is kind of like source. It's telling you the source, so you can put like an absolute or relative URL there. And then you can also use target. So target, let's say you wanted something to be clickable, and when the person clicks on it, you want it to open in a separate tab. You don't want it to change the site. You just want to open in a separate tab. You can set target equal to _blank, and that will open it in a separate tab. Input, you can have placeholder there, and these doesn't mean that these are all the attributes there. There are a bunch of attributes that you can use for these. These are just a few examples. Placeholder, let's say you have a form, right? First name, last name, email, address, whatever. So in those boxes, sometimes you see it like IE John Doe or something like that. They're using the placeholder. So you put whatever text you want to be in there when the form pops up or the input box pops up. And then once they click on it, it changes. Button on click is an example of add functionality that isn't automatically associated with that tag. On click is when you click on a button, you can set it equal to the name of a function in JavaScript, which we'll go over next week. But once you click that button, it jumps to your JavaScript file and then it runs that function. So that's one thing that's pretty cool with attributes. So let's go ahead and add some elements with attributes so you can kind of see it in action. All right, so let's say in my navigation, I want to be able to click on different words so I can go to the portfolio and contact page, right? So I'm going to use an anchor tag, which remember uses the href and I'm going to set it equal to its file path because it is not an absolute URL. So the file path, it's already like automatically directly under the root directory. So I'm just going to put the file name. So we have portfolio.html. Then I'm going to close that. Then I have my closing tag. And then in between the opening and closing tag is where you're going to write your text that is actually clickable. So I'm going to write, check out my work. Okay. I also want to go to the index page. I mean the contact page. So I'm going to go to contact.html. Then I'm going to say contact me. And then let's say that I'm on the portfolio or contact page. I need a way to go back to the home page. So I'm going to include that in my navigation as well. And then we'll say index.html. We'll say about me. Okay, so I have a navigation there. Okay, anchor tags. These are going to be clickable words, and it's going to take me to these files. Okay, let's say I wanted to add an image under Meet Cassandra. So I'm going to use the image, and it had source. So I'll set that equal, put quotes, and then image tags are special in the sense that they don't have a closing tag. I don't have to do this for image tags. They close on their own. So I'm going to go ahead and grab an image from the internet. So let's go ahead and search for one. So if we go to my GitHub account, take a minute to load here. I can right click and say copy image address. Okay. So I have my image address, and then that image will pop up. If I had an image saved in my folder, let's say I saved the same image, right? So let me go ahead and download this. It's JPEG, and we're going to save it on my desktop. And go back to the desktop here. Here's my image. My folder was project, CFS project. Here we go. Drop it in here. Come back over here. We see the image is here. So now in my index.html, I can just put the file path, which is cast.jpg, and we have our image there. Okay. And then let's see, we have a footer. So let's go ahead and add some more anchor tags. So I'm going to have anchor tag here. Now I'm just going to say, let's pretend we're going to, well, let's use GitHub for one. So I'll put my GitHub address, and then I'll use the target attribute because I don't want them to leave my site once they click on that, so I'll just use _blank so it opens in a separate tab. Then I have my closing, and then I'll have them click on the word GitHub to go to my GitHub. And let's do the same thing for LinkedIn. Okay, and then let me get my LinkedIn profile here. We have that. All right, so we have some anchor tags and we have some image tags. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. So if we open our project here and then we open this with Google Chrome, I'm opening my index HTML file. I'm going to go ahead, move this down. We can see my code, right? So about me, check out my work. We didn't write anything in the portfolio. Contact. So if we see here, once we click on that, we can't go back because we didn't put a navigation there. So let's go ahead and add some navigation. into these other pages here. Save that. Save that. So if we refresh here, we can go back to the other pages. We see that the two images popped up, even though that we wrote it in different ways, right? One's pulling directly from the website and one's pulling from my root directory. And LinkedIn, it opens up in a separate tab, so that target attribute is working. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on here. Any questions? I'm sorry, before I continue about the elements with attributes.
Yeah, let me ask. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're fine.
When you opened the project folder, oh yeah, right there.
Mm-hmm.
That part of Atom.
No, this is just my folder on my desktop.
Oh, okay, just a folder.
Yeah, I just opened the folder on my desktop, right-clicked it, and then it said open with Google Chrome. Oops, didn't mean to click that. Any other questions? All right, we'll go ahead and keep moving then. All right, so next we have the semantic elements. So that's our heading tags, and they're listed by importance. So 1 is the most important, and 6 is the 6th least important. So it's H1 through 6. We have italicized, which EM versus I. EM is treated as important. So if you're looking at a visually impaired site, EM is going to look slightly different than I, where I is just italicized. If you want to bold something, you can use the strong tag. We have ordered list and unordered list. So an ordered list is like a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Unordered list is like bullet points, just the little circles. So here we have a little bit of nesting. So we have our opening and closing of ordered list. And then inside of that, we have our list item, which has its own opening and closing. Unordered list looks almost exactly the same. So let's go ahead, oops, and add some semantic elements, okay? So let's say I want to add some heading tags. So I'm going to make all these heading tags H1.
Excuse me, but so by doing that, putting the H1 that's the first thing that you'll see because it's most important.
It's matter of like size and emphasis. So if we look here, you see how it got bigger?
Ah, okay.
But like if you're looking through a search engine, and search engines, like you need to make sure that anything that's like in an H1 tag is relative to your site, because search engines use that as well. So that's what it means by importance. Like you're going to put the name of your company in H1 because that's probably one of the most important things that someone should know when they go to your site is the name of
So
your.
like when something's getting Googled, then you put a specific detailed, name or whatever it is, the
Exactly.
H1 will populate first, right?
Mm-hmm. This
Right,
is going
cool.
to be the most important content. All right, so we have some H1. Let's add some paragraph tags here so we can have some content here. Let's use some P tags. And then I'm just going to steal some dummy text from the lovely internet. And we can do that by using Lorem Ipsum. It's some Latin. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I know it's Latin. But it can generate some text for you. Let's say I want 5 paragraphs. I can generate that. They also have other versions of this, like Bacon Ipsum, and it's just a bunch of pork names. There's a lot of stuff out there, so you can go ahead and play around with that, have a little bit of fun with your code. But I'm just going to go ahead and put that in there, put a little bit of that in there, some in there, and then I'm going to view and do a soft rep so I can see my text. I'm just going to make this section one about half the size. Okay, so then I have my paragraph tags, and then I'm going to go ahead and add an ordered list. Lost my mouse. And I'll do it under skills. So here I'm going to have my ordered list, my closing, and then I'll have a couple list items here. Okay. And then with that, I'll do problem solving. Let's do HTML. Let's do CSS. Right, so let's go ahead and save that. And then if we refresh that, we have some content here. If we see down here, the ordered list is ordered and numbered. If I wanted to make it an unordered list, all I'm changing is the O to a U. Save that. Now it's just bullet points. So that's the difference between an ordered and unordered list. Okay. So let's go ahead and keep on moving here. Next thing we're going to talk about is tables and forms. Tables are similar to an Excel spreadsheet. So just as like you have rows and columns listing out different information, let's say you're writing a schedule, you have your day where you have Monday through Sunday, and then you have the date, and then you have activity that you're doing, and you fill it out. So that's a table. Forms is a valuable way to gather information. So that's essentially, you know, a contact me form where they put their first name, their last name, their email, and a message that they're sending out to you. So that's going to be a form. You'll have like a submit button. You're going to be using the input tags to create a form. So we need that input. But we'll see exactly what that looks like here. So let's go ahead and add a table and a form. So let's move on over here. So let's say I do this in my, let's say in a little bit of history, I have an education section. So I'm going to put this in an H2 tag, just so you can see the difference here. And then in my education, I'll go ahead and make a table. So first we're going to use our table tag. Inside the table, we have the T head. So this is where you put like the titles of all your data. And then in that, I'm going to have T body. After that, that's where we're putting in all the data entry. So this is kind of the structure for a table, right? We have the table, then we have the head, and then we have the body. Okay. Inside the head is where we're going to have the titles of everything. So with that, we have a TR, which means a row. It's going to be a row. In the row, you have TD. This is where you're putting your data. Right? So this is, your TD is deciding how many columns you have. Okay, so R is row, D is columns. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a couple here. Actually, I'm going to put them on the same line. And let's see. Let's say we have school, location, major, degree, cert. Okay, and then that's my head, right? So that is the top. Those are my titles. So in my body, let's go ahead and make a couple rows. Okay, so here we're going to have TR, I'll just fill out 2 rows of this table here. Okay, and then TD. So the first thing asks for school. So let's say Coder Camps. Location, Arizona. Let's say major, full stack web. Oops, got the / there. And then the last thing it's asked for is degree or cert. Any cert of completion. Okay, now I'm just gonna go and copy and paste this. And then I'll just replace this information. So we'll say UT Austin, Texas, electrical and computer engineering, and then we'll say Bachelor of Science. All right, so we got a table there. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. All right, so we see here we have our table, right? These are our titles, and this is our information, okay? Any questions on table before I jump into forms?
So if you didn't put like the table Coder Camp, Arizona full stack, then all you would see is just like Austin, Texas. So you need to like separate the both, right? That's what you're saying?
Right, so if I'm understanding, you mean the different rows that I created?
Yeah, the different rows, exactly.
Right. So that is what's putting it on the next line, right? Because we're starting a new row of information.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to go ahead and comment out one of these images. I don't need 2 of me. So let's go ahead and comment that out. And what I did there is I did command / so that can comment or uncomment things very easily. All right. And if something's commented out, it's treated as just like notes. It's not treated as code. So if we refresh that, we see that one of them disappears. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into forms. I'm going to put this on my contact page. So let's go ahead and add a form here. So with that, we have our form tag. Okay. So form. Okay. With form, we have the action, which is specific to where the info is going to go. So this is, you usually put a file name here, and then that information that's inside of the form is sent to wherever action is set to. Then we have the method, and that is usually the value, that's how the form is going to be sent. So the information, the input information, and then how the data is going to be sent. So it could be a different number of things depending on what you need your form to do. So with the form, you have your input tag. And inputs are self-closing, so we don't need that. And then with input, you have type. So what type of input is it? Then you have ID. That's going to be useful when you come to JavaScript. And then we're going to have name. And name just stands for the value of that input once the information is submitted. So let's say that we wanted to do first name. The type is going to be text. The ID is going to be first name. And the name is going to be first name. Okay, so I'm going to do that a couple times here. And then I'll just change this to last name, and let's say this is message. And we have message. Okay. And then the last thing I'm going to put is I'm going to put a submit. So it's going to be type submit, and the value is going to be submit. Okay, so that's after they put in all the information, then we click that little submit button. So let's go ahead and save that. Refresh our page. Go to our contact. We see here, we have our inputs. But it's not really helpful because I don't know what I'm supposed to be putting inside of these inputs. So what we can do is we can add a label. Okay, so I'm going to use a label tag. And label tags do have closings. Okay, and then between the label and the input, I'm going to just put the label. Okay, I'll do the same for here. Message. All right. So there we go. We have our label. Lost my mouse again. Here we go. Refresh. Now we have labels. First name, last name, message, and then our submit button. That's pretty much forms in a nutshell. You can do a lot more with forms, but that's something you can research and kind of look deeper into to see all the different things that you can do with it. But as far as the basics, anyone have any questions as far as form?
Well, is that like how some people, I mean, that's just like how to create capture pages or funnel pages? Like, you know, when someone, like obviously like how you just did it and then it just brings them on to the next page, or sometimes you receive an email with like.
Yeah. So with the, like when you sign up for something, like sign up for this coupon, put in your information, and then you get an email and now you're part of a subscription list. You can use forms for a lot of things, or you can have a form that sends you an email. Let's say they wanted to contact you. Let's say you're a musician or something and someone wanted to book you for a gig. They could fill out the form and then an email gets sent out to you with information, and then you can go on and contact that person, or they have booked an appointment, or anything really. You could do a lot of things with forms.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions?
Yeah, what goes into the action and the method? Like
So the action is going to be a file that this information is sent to, and the method is how that file is sent. It's usually a PHP extension. So that's not something you're going to learn in this course, but that's something that you can definitely do, like when you on your downtime, do some research on it, and because that involves some PHP code to do the action or the method. And there's pre-written code out there that you can just copy and paste. Like if you need it to do something basic, like email you the information on the form. But if you're doing something specific to like a web application that you're creating, I would definitely take some time and do a little bit of research on PHP and how all that works. Any other questions? All right, let's go ahead and keep moving. We'll go ahead and jump into CSS. So CSS is a cascading style sheet. It was developed as a way to style the HTML. So as we look at our site right now, it's pretty boring. Not very fun to look at. So CSS is what adds all the styling to it. So if we were to go to another site like Vans.com, and we take a look, it's a little bit more pleasant to look at. We got background, we got dancing shoes, all sorts of stuff, different fonts. So that's where CSS comes into work. CSS is called cascading because the styles from a parent element also apply to its descendants. So just like we inherit genes from our parents, I've inherited my brown hair, my brown eyes from my parents, CSS is the same. So let's say that I added some properties to the body, right? I said body, background color, blue. That means anything inside of the body is a child, and it's all going to have the background color blue. So that's what it means by cascading. So before we write any CSS, we need to link our CSS file to our HTML file. So all the linking is going to be done in the head, and we're going to be using a link tag, which is closing as well. So we have a couple of attributes here. We have rel, which is relation. The relation of this file to the file that I'm linking it to is a style sheet. The type of file it is text, but CSS. So just like we do .css, that's kind of what it's doing here. And then href. We are already familiar with href, and we just put the file route. So if we go ahead and add this to our code, we can go ahead and link a CSS file. So we're in our head. We'll do link rel style sheet type text, oops, CSS, and then href equals style.css. Okay, I'm just going to copy and paste that here. Contacts, got it. So if we see here these blue circles, that means the file hasn't been saved. So I'm going to save that, and oops, save that. Can close that. All right, so we have linked our CSS to our index, but does anyone see a problem?
So you actually broke up for a big part of that. I couldn't hear.
Oh, so I've linked my CSS here, but do you see a problem with anything right now? Am I missing something?
A /?
See, there's no CSS in your project folder.
Exactly. I don't have the CSS file. So let's go ahead and create one. So I'm going to call it style.css.
Now, does you naming that style.css, does that affect the
No, I could call this bananas.css,
okay.
and then this would just have to be called bananas.css.
Gotcha.
All right, so we have everything linked together. Cool. So next, we're going to talk about the syntax. So with CSS, you have your selector. Now, a selector can be an element, it can be a class name, or it can be an ID name, and we'll cover that a little bit later. But we have our selector, then you have your curly brackets, and then you have your property, colon, value, semicolon, means the end of the property. Then you can put as many of these as you need into this specific thing. So if we had multiple, I could put 10, I could put 1, whatever I needed. Basic properties that you'll be dealing with is color, background color, font family, font weight, border style. So font family means just the style of font. Font weight is the thickness of it, essentially, or how thin or how thick. Background color is what you would assume it would be, and color is the color of the text. Border style, that's like if you want a little border around something, you can have it dashed, solid, dotted. There's a number of different values. One really great place to look up different properties, because there's no way that anyone can remember all of them, is W3 Schools. If you go here, go to CSS, and let's say we'll go with borders. You can see all the different values that they have. So there's no way that I'm going to remember all of that. So you can go ahead and, bookmark this page because it's going to be a really great resource for you. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead. Keep going here. So let's go ahead and add some properties. So let's say I want to add some properties. Let's say I want to go for the body. So the body is my selector. have my curly brackets. I'm going to say background color black. And with colors, you could do like recognizable colors, which is basic colors like white, black, green, blue. But if you want to like a specific hue, you can use different websites give you this. I like color.adobe. And you can use a hex or an RGB. So let's say I wanted it to be this blue right here. Right? Here's the hex. I'm going to copy that. And then I would just do pound, hashtag, whatever you want to call it, and then the hex code. So if we save that, and we look here, it's that specific color. Okay, but I'm just going to go ahead and use black. And then I want the font color to be white. And let's say the font family, I want it to be sans serif. Okay, semicolon. Let's see, let's target our H1 tags, right? We have a few of those. Let's say I want the color to be yellow. And then let's add our table. Let's put a border style around our table. I'm going to say border style. Let's go ahead and do dashed. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that and see how that affects everything. All right, so we got some changes. My H1s, these are all H1s, turned yellow just as expected. Remember, education is an H2. The color of everything in my body is white except our H1s. And then we have, so CSS is very specific. So H1 is technically inside of the body, right? So if I had never written this, it would still be white. But CSS is very specific. So if I'm targeting something very specific, it's going to change it and override this. And then we'll look at table, which is then dash. So everything that we wrote has occurred. Let me refresh, so I'm gonna make that yellow again. And that's kind of the very basics of CSS. So let's go ahead and jump into something a little bit more complicated. We have our classes and IDs. So these are other selectors that you can use. So earlier I said you can use an element. With the selectors, you can do classes and IDs as well. So classes uses the dot syntax and it's reusable. So with a class, let's say you have different sections that you want to have the same style. You want it to have the same color, the same font, whatever, the same background color. So you'll reuse that. There's no point in you writing that 6 times if you're using the same code 6 times. IDs use the pound syntax and it must be unique. So these are not reusable. Excuse me. You can only have unique ID. So if your ID is banana, then banana can only be used in one place. So let's go ahead and add some classes and IDs. So I'm going to add a class to table 1 and a paragraph. So let's say this paragraph, I'm going to call it, I'm going to give it a class, and it's an attribute. So it's going to be in the opening tag, and I'm going to call it Roboto. And then let's say my table, I want to have that class too. Okay. Since it's a class, I'll use the dot notation. So dot, name of class, and then the property that I want in there. I'm going to change the font family. But I personally don't like the built-in fonts, so I'm going to import my own font. So one way that I can do that is I can go to Google Fonts. Okay, and we have Roboto here, so I'm just going to, let's say I want, let's go with the bold. Okay, and then I'm going to add it. Then here, I can import it with a link tag, and it gives me the information I need. So now in my head, I'm linking. Okay, I'm just going to add it to all of them. Okay. And then now in my CSS, I can use this rule here. All right, and the way that this is written, it's saying the font family is Roboto, so that's the font that we want to use. But if a particular web browser doesn't support this font, then it will default to sans serif. So that's why it's written with this comma. If we didn't have this, it would just default to the default font that it is. But this is specifying, okay, if it doesn't have this, default to at least this one. Okay, so we'll save that. And then let's see how that affected our page. So if we see here, the font changed here and it changed here, right? Those are classes that we use. To make it more visible, I can change the color to red. And we can see that they've changed. Okay, now if we wanted to do the same with ID, let's say let's say we have this div have, and actually let's make this H1 have an ID, and we're going to set it equal to history. It's the name of this section. And then in our CSS, instead of a dot, we use a hashtag, so history, and then I'll change the color of it to, let's say, green. There, it has changed to green. Okay, so those are classes and IDs. Anyone have any questions about either of those? Everyone's good on those? All righty. Okay, so let's see here. We'll go ahead and continue. We'll go ahead and talk about the display property. So the display property has a number of values. We have the block value, which makes the element a block. It won't let anything sit next to it on a page. So remember when I had the two images next to each other? Let's see, let me uncomment this here. And if I did, so let's see how it looks with it. Okay, so if I did image, and I do display block, it won't let it sit next to each other. Okay, so that's display block. Display inline makes the element sit on the same line as another element, but without formatting it like a block. And display none makes everything disappear. So let's see what inline looks like. And let's see none. All right, so I'm just going to leave it at inline. We'll save it there. So those are the differences of the different display properties and values. With the CSS, you'll find when you're working with CSS, you'll put some properties and then it did something that you did not want it to do, or it did something you completely didn't expect, or it didn't sit next to something the way that you wanted to sit next to. CSS is kind of like an art form. So with that, you want to keep in mind the box model. So in here, we have our content area. And by content area, we're talking about any content. This table, this heading, this paragraph, these images, that's our content. Around each content, we can adjust the height and width. So if I wanted to adjust the width of my images and I say 20 pixels, we see that it shrunk down to 20 pixels. Okay, if I wanted to make it 100%, we see that it takes up the whole page. Okay, I'm going to leave that alone. Around the height and width, you have your padding. And if you do padding equals something, that's going to do padding all around. It's going to have equal padding. If you wanted to control the top and the bottom, the right and the left, and you want them to all have different values, you can do that. So the property would just be padding top, padding right, padding bottom. Same thing goes for border. Same thing goes for margin. So there's all this stuff around one content. So you want to be mindful of when you're messing with your padding, your border, and your margin, how it affects everything and all the space in between the content. I would recommend downloading this, taking a picture of it, whatever you need to do. There's also built-in Google Chrome plugins that you can download. They're not built in, sorry. And you can like click a little box and then it shows you all the box models. I don't believe I have it downloaded on this computer, but it's a really cool feature. I would highly recommend checking the Chrome plugins for developers. They have a lot of great tools that will make your life a lot easier. And that concludes my lecture for today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask right after I end talking right now, or you can Slack me or email me later. So does anyone have any questions of the topics that we covered, any of the code we discussed?
You kind of broke up there. Would you mind repeating that? I'm sorry.
Oh, do you have any questions on any of the topics we discussed?
Not at all. I'm going to go. I missed the first couple of slides, but I'm just going to go through and follow up. And
Okay.
if I do, I'll email you.
Yeah, just email me or Slack me. I'm on
Thank
for
you
the
so
rest
much.
of the day. Yeah, no problem. Anyone else? Questions, concerns, comments?
I do. I wanted to see if, so obviously you're using a Mac here.
Mhm.
I guess I need to play around with the Atom program to see how you were, creating files and whatnot. So
Yeah, I can show you real quick, and it's not dependent on a Mac or a Windows. When you open so you can just do File, Open, and then choose your folder, and then you can just right-click it, and then click New File whenever you want to make new files.
Okay, and then those will be, so like all of this is going to be saved in files on your computer.
Right, so if we look at my actual desktop and we open this folder, we have the files there.
Okay, and so that way if you were to, I don't know, your computer, something happens to it, you can always access that again, or would you be able to access it directly from Atom as well?
It has to be on your computer. So Atom is just like a tool, but the file actually exists on your computer. It doesn't exist on Atom. So what you want to do, and this will be covered next week, is use GitHub to save all your work. So that if anything crazy happens to your computer or randomly you're outside of the country, you can download it as long as you have internet.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Anyone else?
We can get your videos correct on here.
Yeah, so in where you clicked, where it says click here at time of lecture, I'm going to replace that with watch recorded video, and then you can just watch it from there.
Okay. And by the way, you do have mad skills, and thank you.
Thanks. You're welcome. Anyone else?
Hey, just a question. When you were talking about the Chrome plugins, do those work with other browsers also, like Explorer or Firefox, or do they only work with the Chrome browser?
It's only with the Chrome browser. I would highly recommend, if you're not using Chrome, to switch it over because it has so many development tools. Internet Explorer is not very conducive to development, but Mozilla has their own, I believe. I'm not 100% on Firefox, but I know they have their own dev community.
Yeah, they do have plugins that are very similar to Chrome.
Well, there you go. Anyone else?
And the content of today's lecture, you said you're going to throw it on Slack?
Oh no, just send me a message on Slack and then I can send you the files. So if you want it, just shoot me a message. My username is cassandra.matos. Just find me there, say, hey, can I have the code from the lecture today? And I can just send you the file.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, any last questions before I end our lecture here? All right, so if you guys do have any last, someone jump in.
Sandra, one last thing.
Uh-huh.
I noticed some mistakes on the quiz and also some mistakes on the material.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a place that I can send those? That
you can let me know.
Okay.
Take a screenshot of where it's wrong, and then I can let the curriculum team know so they can update it.
I think you broke up again.
Cassandra, I'm so sorry, you broke up totally. How do I get that information?
Sorry. So you just send me a screenshot of the problem, and then I'll let the curriculum team know, and then they can update the curriculum to the correct material.
By email then?
No, you can just let me know, and then I'll let them know.
Thanks.
Real quick, are you talking about the questions that didn't have a question, they just had the answers?
That is 2 of them, right? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, 2 of them. So I already submitted that.
Yeah, I had the same problem as well too.
Yeah, there was a mess up. I forgot to uncomment something.
Really messed my head up. I was like, what?
I'm so sorry. Well, if you guys ever run into any issues like that where your brain is just splattered on the wall, just send me a message. I'll help you out. It might not.
Yeah, and I tried to retake the test, and it just gave me like a long buffering thing, and then I couldn't redo it, and then it just said that I didn't take the test, and I couldn't get back to it.
Okay, so send me a message on Slack with that information so I can let them know.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you, Sandra.
Yeah, no problem. Anybody else?
Is it okay to kind of be a little, if you're new to this, even after a lecture like this, your head's still kind of in the clouds a little bit about it?
Oh, yeah. I expect all your brains to be on the wall and totally confused.
Cool.
So that's totally normal. Just hit me up. Make sure you schedule your code reviews with your mentors. Like, use your mentors. That's what they're there for. If they're not available, hit me up, and we can do a code review as well.
Is there like a calendar or something we could find to schedule with them?
They should have reached out to you. So
I tried reaching back out to my mentor, but he hasn't gotten back to me.
Okay. So send me information about that, and then I can help you out from there.
Okay.
Cassandra, I have one last little question. If we have more time for this, what is your recommendation on moving forward through lessons that aren't for like that day? So for example, I already did today's lesson yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recommend, like, if you have the time to continue to go through that?
Yeah, definitely. If you can finish early, and then I can always give you more stuff to work on. So,
that was my question.
Yeah, I'll no problem. I can easily give you stuff more to do.
Okay. So just Slack you about that?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Anybody else?
What if something's not done on the due date due to obviously they not understanding, but also not getting in contact with the mentor? What's the best way to go about that?
So if you're falling behind and you're worried about your status and you can't get a hold of it, usually you and your mentor will come up with a new game plan to get you back on track. But if for whatever reason you can't get a hold of them, let me know, and then we can make up a game plan and kind of figure it out. Worst comes to worst, depending what program you're doing, will depend on the consequences of falling super behind. So it's dependent on what track you're on and what program you're using. So that could be a more private conversation, and then we can kind of figure it out.
Okay. Now, is everyone here like part-time, or is this like a mixture of full-time and part-time?
The all online students are considered part-time students.
Okay. All right. I think that's covers it for today.
All right. Anybody else?
Sandra, even though it's considered part-time, are
Uh-huh.
you able to move ahead?
Yeah. If you're done by the Friday, we can go ahead and move you on. But with that course, so if you were ahead in the course and you're done, then we can give you more work. But each course is 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, depending on which program you're in. So you'll have to wait the full 2 weeks in order to get on to the next course. So if you finish early, I can just give you more work so you can better your skills in that particular course.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
No problem.
Oh, one more thing. I use Safari. Is that compatible as well too with like Chrome?
Safari, I don't think they have many dev tools. I would just download Chrome.
Okay.
Yeah. Chrome or Mozilla, whichever is your preference.
Okay. And down the line is are we going to be required to download like any applications to?
Yeah, later on in the course, as you jump into different courses along the program, there are going to be different applications that you will be downloading, but you don't have to worry about downloading them now. Just in the course, it will step you through how to download it, how to install it, and how to use it.
Okay. Alrighty.
All right. Well, if anyone has any other questions, just go ahead and shoot me a message on Slack. But I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting for today. I will be available for the next 45 minutes. So if you guys do have any questions, go ahead and send me a message. Thank you so much for attending and have a great day.
All right.